Thoughts on the readings for February 22nd, Exodus 35, Psalms 92, 93, 1 Corinthians 4, 5, Exodus 35 verses 1 to 3 tell of the absolute sanctity of the Sabbath. Neither work, nor the kindling of a fire, were allowed. Disobedience by doing work on the Sabbath would result in death. Verses 4 to 29 speak of the free will offerings of Israel. Notice the repetition of the words which tell us of the mind of those who gave verses 6, 21 to 22, 26, 29. This is the vital ingredient in service. If it does not come from free will, nor from a generous heart, the Lord does not want it. This principle occupies 2 chapters in 2 Corinthians 8-9. Read slowly and aloud verses 3 to 7 and 19 to 22 from chapter 8, and verses 6 to 10. 15 from chapter 9. Ponder what are the implications for your service to the Almighty. Exodus 35 verses 30 to 35 describe the divinely aided skills which God gave to Bezaleel and Aholiab. Psalm 92 is a song for the Sabbath. It extols the Almighty for the greatness of His works. Lute, harp, and lyre were the musical instruments that accompanied the singers of this psalm. In verse 2 they praised and thanked their sovereign for His steadfast love. Verses 5 to 6 tell of the depths of divine thought, Isaiah 55 verses 8 to 11. The ignorant and stupid cannot even begin to understand. These fools will meet their divinely designed doom. The psalmist says that his God has granted him the freedom of a wild ox. The writer had seen the downfall of his foes. By way of contrast, Yahweh had caused the righteous to flourish in His house, like the palm and cedar trees. These trees are symbols of fruitfulness and immortality. And the mouths of the faithful will magnify the mighty God of Israel, their rock of stability and permanence. Psalm 93 celebrates God as king robed in splendor and reigning in righteousness over His realm. Verse 2 teaches us that He has always been king and will be forever. It is quoted in Hebrews 1. Verse 3 tells that despite the roaring power of the nations, as they rise up in a flood, the mighty God supremely rules over their rage. Compare Psalm 2. The psalm concludes in verse 5 with the confidence of those who trust in the Lord. Psalm 125. The letters to the Corinthians are the most autobiographical of all Paul's letters. In this 4th chapter of the first letter we learn that Paul was being severely criticized by his detractors, of whom there were many. He started by telling us that he was scrupulously honest and in money matters above reproach. This didn't by any means justify him. It will be our Lord Jesus Christ who will justify the faithful in the day of judgment. Then follows a heavily ironic segment addressed to those his accusers. He said that they were reigning as if the kingdom had already commenced. Oh, says Paul, if only that this was so. By contrast, he and the apostles were treated like the armies defeated by Rome. The vanquished were paraded to be derided and then executed. His opponents, on the other hand, were lauding it over the vanquished. In no way would they ever be able to crush Paul's resilience. The reason he directed them to this was that as a father he loved them and sought to admonish them. The Corinthians had no shortage of educated instructors, but he alone would be a father to them. Paul urges that they learn from him and become his imitators. They must address the problem, otherwise he would be forced to come to them in discipline, rather than, as was his preference, as a gentle teacher. He tells them in chapter 5 that in among them was a case of shameless incest. So bad it was that non-Christians would find it disturbing. He told them how to deal with it. Penned by Warwick Rosser and his team, produced by christadelphianvideo.org.